Hello RC fans, Racing 393. So I thought I'd just do a quick chat video really about the RC hobby and about I'm wondering whether it will resonate with a lot of people who are similar age to myself. So I am over 50 years old. And I'm wondering how many other people are in that kind of envelope that do RC racing. Maybe they've done it all their life. Maybe they've only just got into it. But what I thought I'd do, I'm going to go over a few subjects here of my RC hobbies in general, and how people see these hobbies. So I'm not trying to be controversial, but I'm just going to give some views across. So let's start off with the car that you see behind me. Now, I had one of these. I won't say when it first came out, but in the early 80s, my parents got me one of these from a catalogue. I think I might have mentioned it in other videos because I can't remember at the time. They're quite expensive, and my mum and dad couldn't afford just to go down to a model shop and part with whatever it was it £300 or whatever it would have been. A lot of money back in the early 80s. Definitely when you consider the average weekly income was somewhere around in the early 80s, like 50 quid a week or something. I don't know, whatever it was. So £300 is a lot of money. So my hobby started with the sand sculpture, and I had quite a number of years with it. Never really raced, but this is before the internet, or before at least the internet was at the homes of many people. Maybe there might have been some lucky people who had email or internet. I've heard of it. I mean, I was at my early secondary school, as we would call that. So nowadays it's sort of year? I don't even know what it is. Year 8. I can never work it out. But secondary school for me starts when you're about 11 years old, might be nearly 12, more like 11. So in those days, internet and that was a big no. So the only way of looking up on radio control car bits and pieces was the magazines. There was a couple out at the time, Radio Race Car and Model Car Magazine. I don't have any of those now, but I used to subscribe. I say I used to subscribe. I did get pocket money, but I think a lot of the magazines were bought by my parents. I didn't have a job, obviously. I was at school, um, doing chores around the house. Definitely not me. I was too lazy for that. So the money must have just come my way with pocket money here and there. And the magazines weren't a lot of money. They were sort of like £1 something, I guess, at the time. So quite a reasonable price to pay for someone who's 11 or 12 years old. Anyway, so the magazines was the only way that you could read up on the radio control car stuff. Tamiya, Kyosho, bits and pieces. What enthralled me back then, and I was super impressed and amazed, I paid a lot of attention to reading the what was called the rallycross scene, and they were the 1/8 buggies, nitro powered. A bit like the one you see behind me, Kyosho Burns, Turbo Burns, whatever they were at the time, MP3, 4, 5. I'm not going to quote years. But I can remember seeing in the magazine people holding these up, and that to me, they compared to the person and the car, they seemed quite big. I mean, 1/8 scale. I wasn't really technically knowledged about anything about that, but it looked good. And I think there may have been, like, the magazines might have come with a video occasionally, like a free gift. And I'm pretty sure one of those videos was footage of various radio control cars at the time. The I think the 1/8 pan cars were definitely on that video, and these, as you can see behind me. So that's what got me fascinated by the fact of engine powered cars. Now, I carried on with the hobby. So I I'm not going to go through all the details here. I started karting at about 14, so I was still at yeah. I'm trying to think. Was there? I'm just trying to get my times right. Yeah, 14 years old, still at school, and I carried on karting all the way up to about 93. So I was about how was I then? 23 or 4 years old. So a massive span of my childhood, teens, up to early 20s job, and I was paying for racing myself. A good sort of portion of my life at that port was, real racing karts. I was interested in stock car racing because that's what my dad did, and karting. So radio control car hobby, if you like, it didn't disappear. I mean, I was buying kits here, and I can remember having the Tamiya Repsol Escort, and that what was that on the TA01 chassis or TA02? I can't remember. And back then, I wouldn't have cared what chassis it was. It was just I liked the livery, so I had one of them, and I hopped. I knew about hop ups, and my local hobby shop was Apex Models, so I was down there pretty much when I wasn't racing most weekends, hopping up that car. Um, Other cars I got along the way, Schumacher Nitro 10, and it was the saloon car version. So pretty much like the Schumacher truck sort of chassis layout. Again, didn't know the. Now I know the sort of the resemblance, but then it was just a Nitro. That was my first Nitro. I think I might have even had an old Nitro engine from somewhere. I don't know where I got that from. I can remember my granddad somehow had one. I had no idea what it was, and I was just looking at it and smelling it, thinking, I like these. I like little engines. Anyway, onto the Schumacher Nitro 10. Got that. I don't know when that come out. It hadn't long been out. Apex Models brought that out, so that was my first Nitro. And in those days, I wouldn't say I had loads of money. I had a credit card, which is probably the worst thing to have when you're sort of in your teens. I need to sneeze. Hang on. So the credit card was getting a bashing, and anyway, then I took up stock car racing, and that went from about 94, 95, 95, all the way up to 2010. So it was a big span of my life. During that period, I wasn't actually in RC at all. I think I still had some RC stuff, and I think, yeah, I did definitely have some RC stuff still. My old electric and vintage Nitro. Well, it wasn't that vintage then, but my Nitro car. Uh, Stopped racing stock cars in 2010. Had a little bit of a break, and a year or two. Sold all that and got back into karting, and did all that up to about 2017, 16 or 17. Didn't even touch RC. Of course, at that point, and quite a period of that time, the internet, online, YouTube. Maybe YouTube wasn't quite as big during the sort of the early parts of that, but by 2017 it had been quite big because I was putting my karting on there. I had a YouTube channel, but it wasn't really for anything else other than me uploading karting videos. So it is on there on my YouTube channel that you're probably watching this on. If you look way back, you'll see karting videos. So that was that, and then the proverbial at the time. I went for a divorce, so that sort of curtailed the racing a little bit premature. I still had scores to settle as this racing's fraternity goes, but I was older. I mean, I was in my mid to late 40s, racing against younger people, probably definitely from like 17, the young ones, but the sort of the period of late teens, 20s to mid 20s, maybe 30. That's the prime of a club karter. And I was there once myself when I realised that I was struggling to keep up anyway. And I wasn't thinking of giving up, but my pride had sort of taken a bit of a bashing. So I was deciding what to do. The divorce curtailed most of it. I've still got my karts, as I probably mentioned in other videos, but I thought as things were sort of tumbling along, I sort of started to revisit the RC scene. I hadn't actually lost interest. In fact, I did go down my local club. It's in Aldershot or Bagshot Lee. They've got an outdoor circuit. They do like touring cars, and I had been down there a few times, but not with a car, just to watch. And I was, one of those. I'm impressed, but I don't know why sort of feelings because I've come from real world racing, full size cars, and then all of a sudden you're turning up at a place which has got radical control cars running around the track, and they were quite quick, but electric, so it was quiet. So, but I was strangely drawn towards it, but I couldn't work out why. So, in between the stopping racing and divorce, I decided to buy one of these. So, this was my very first recent purchase. So, I bought this sort of 2016, 15. I don't know. When did I buy it? I don't know. But I was sort of racing still at the time, sort of dabbing. I hadn't quite given that up. And I decided, because this is one of the cars that I could not afford when I was younger. It came out in the 80s, didn't it? 80 something, 85, 86, don't know. But I can remember at the time thinking, wow, look at that. Because back then, I was from the Sand Scorcher era. So that's all I knew. And then you read about, in the magazines then, of course, the Tamiya Hotshot. Didn't know the significance of it back then, but it was the first Tamiya four-wheel drive buggy. But I didn't know that then. Going forward to sort of recent times, when I saw this, I thought, wow, look, I remember that. And it wasn't that expensive. A couple of £100 at the time. You're a lot older, you're earning your own money, blah, blah, blah. Of course, it doesn't end with just the kit. So I'm thinking to myself, back in the day, you used to be able to buy a starter pack, a transmitter, and servos, and the receiver. And of course, when I stopped RC interest fully back in the day, electronic speed controllers were just coming in. I can remember buying my very first electronic speed controller from Apex models, and it was into the three figures. I'm talking like it must have been over £100. I can remember spending what I thought, that's a lot of money, but what a difference it made compared to the mechanical type of speed controller that would have been around at the time. So when I looked into the electronics needed for the kit, you're asking on the forums very basic questions because you didn't know. And when people sort of told you, you're sort of looking up. Of course, you had the internet then. I think I definitely went on to Model Sport. I think that's where I bought this actually, Model Sport, because my local hobby store had long since closed. So yeah, when you realise that bloody hell, electronic speed controllers are like £22 or £30, I just couldn't get my head round it. And then you realise that the receivers are like little diddy things, and I think, well, I remember a receiver being like a massive brick. I've still got, when you look at it now, like the vintage receivers to the new one. I mean, it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? But you didn't know that at the time. There was not a lot about when you get back into it. You wasn't sure where to look. What, how. Anyway, of course, getting the electronics for this and building the car reignited the passion that I had anyway for the RC hobby. And I thought, I actually quite enjoyed building that. It's up there actually, and I built it to kit like stock, and then I thought to myself, well, I think I'll hop it up a little bit. So I think what did I put in that? So I put some different tyres on it, like Schumacher, like those not track tyres. What are they? Honey. What did I say? Honeycomb. Is that right? The honeycomb tyres. I'm looking at them now. And the motor I put in was I can't think it's not brushless. I didn't know anything about brushless at this point. it's quicker than a silver can. I think it was a vintage brushed motor. But again, I didn't know the ins and outs of brushed and brushless. All I realised was, well, the brushed motor is kind of what I remember back in the day, especially when they were in the magazines, like hopping up motors and buying these race motors. I remember reading about it, but didn't really know about the brushless scene. Was a bit above, straight above, oh, doing, way above my head. So we start off with the hot shot, and I got really into it. Now, as far as using the car, this is where a controversial subject matter. Now, I have since, after buying this, I have raced my LMP12, and there's plenty of videos of me doing various bits and pieces. Finding a little bit harder now with time at the moment to get down to the what is fairly local, so an hour away or so, 50 minutes track in Wickham. So I haven't done any racing much, but I have enjoyed what I have been doing. Much more so than I realised, because I did like a BRCA event a couple of years ago, which sort of threw me back in the deep end. But I realised the competitiveness of it and just how good you need to be. So, getting rid of all that, I did use this car outside, but I don't know how many of others people are out there. It might just be me, but thinking of other people looking at you, right? There's a man playing with a toy car. I'm enjoying it. I'm on the runway, whizzing up and down. I thought that goes really well. I'm enjoying the physics of the car, the ducking and diving of the suspension, not wrecking it. Don't want it to roll over. Listen to the tyres scrabbling for grip, going up. Not so much talking about top speed, but handling and getting the car running and using the car. I thought I enjoy that. I enjoy listening to the car working. Of course, it is electric. It's not a nitro. But other people looking in, I'm always a bit wary of what I shouldn't be, because who cares? But there's an older man, playing with a toy car. I've got no kids with me, so you can't hide behind the barrier of kids. So it does bring another problem. Should it be a problem? This is the controversial bit of the video. Men or women playing with toy cars. Now, I don't know. I mean, looking back to when I've been out of the car, it's not so much other adults thinking what they think, but the kids, teenagers who are about thinking, look at that. Look what. You should swap places. It should be the teenager playing with the car, should it not? I don't know. It's just an image. Now, over time, so bringing more up to present time, I've got a lot of RC cars which I haven't built, and I've also got a lot of nitros. So this particular nitro behind you is RC10 GT by Team Associated. Another kit which I've got a lot on my channel. This isn't my kit. This is not my one, but it gives you just a different picture to look at, to be honest. So when I started taking the nitro cars out, and I've got more and more nitros now, I've got loads in here, it gave you a different perception of what an RC car is, and a little bit of perhaps what other people think. When I took my nitros out, like when I take my nitros out, not that I took, I still do, it does generate a bit of interest. People do come over, and they're quite interested in the nitro when they hear it running, see it running. And I must admit, it looks, when I can remember before I got a nitro, seeing a nitro car, My neighbour at the time had nitro. He had aeroplanes. He was more into. Well, he didn't have any cars. He was into his aeroplanes. But the sound, the smell, when I used to go with him when he used to take his aeroplanes out, and I used to find that really interesting. But it was way beyond what I thought at the time. I think I was still karting, so I was probably in my 15, 16, 17 age, but thinking I could never get one of them to work. I think that's awesome, but it's a man's hobby. Do you know what I mean? You need to be a man to do that because I wouldn't know where to start. It just looked complex when he used to start it up and tweaking, and I can remember fiddling. I wasn't really didn't have any idea what they were doing, what he was doing, but it just looked complex. And I guess that's the impression you get if you see someone with a nitro now of what other people they're interested because one, it's noisy. It's not super noisy, but it could be if you used it in a enclosed environment. It's quite loud, and they're fairly impressed. I wouldn't say they're faster than the electrics because they're probably not at the sort of scale that we're doing here on an airfield. No, a typical electric car probably would be on par with a good set nitro, but it sounds better and looks better, and it draws a lot of attention. I find people come over and I'll stop the car because I wouldn't run it when there were kids or dogs around. If there's anyone walking by or that, I'm very respectful. I bring it over and stop it, and people come over and they look at it and they ask questions about it, and say that. I mean, I had a lot of people. There was a few women walking their dogs, and they're the least likely demographic to walk over and chat to some strange bloke with what is effectively still a toy car and chat about it. You're not expecting it. And when you hear things like, "Oh, my husband's got them," or "My husband's got a load of them," he was into that. Some of them like when we got married, or he's still into that. And it's interesting that the nitro brings more of the people around than the electric. The electric, it's just you can't hear them. I mean, they are quick, and people are generally not as impressed. So I don't feel quite as inconspicuous using a nitro out and about. I'm on my own. Maybe you're thinking, well, you shouldn't feel inconspicuous anyway. You're just using the car. It's your hobby. You should enjoy it, and I do. So this is going back to where this video is going. Of what do you do? I mean, if you race, good on you because you're in an environment where other people are racing. So it's not, you don't stand out. You're just part of that in fraternity. If you're just a hobbyist, if you've got like a Traxxas or something, the trucks, the T-Max. I've seen some of those out and about with what are not kids, they're adults with kids, like a family, and these trucks whizzing about. And I'm thinking, that's quite impressive because they're big, they're fast, and they just look good. I haven't got a Traxxas, so I'm not really into that side of the hobby. But from me looking out, I think that looks quite good. It doesn't look like a man with a toy, but that's exactly what it is. An expensive toy, but it's just an image. So this is where I'm at with the hobby. Haven't quite got all the time to go and race. There are local clubs near me. I'm still near to a buggy off-road AstroTurf club. That's very local, and the outside touring car scene. That's local. And the indoor carpet scene for Wickham, that's reasonably local. So I've got 3 different disciplines, all within an hour. I think one's a 50 minutes, one's 15 minutes, other one's for about 25 minutes. So finding time is my problem. But going back to, I'm now over 50 and I still enjoy the hobby. It's taken over part of my life. I've got a shed which is full of stuff, I build cars. I rekindle old vintage nitros, and some of those I've never heard of, but it's just the knowledge of building the nitro and getting it back to its running how it was, standard maybe, modifying them maybe with a different body shell or retrofitting something that would go on there. I quite enjoy that part of the hobby. YouTube's absolutely exploded with knowledge now, so whatever you need to find, if you go on YouTube, it's going to be on there. And also, it will lead you to forums and other bits and pieces which are really, really helpful when it comes to the hobby. So, what are your thoughts? It'd be really interesting to hear from people who are slightly on the, somewhere around my age, between, 45 and 55. If you're in the hobby, instant hobby, which you will be, there's going to be loads out there. And what about the younger people that perhaps maybe have just come into the hobby? What What do you think about the older people? And you see them playing with their toy cars. What I mean, does it? Do you have an opinion on that? Do you think, look at that man playing with a toy car? Or do you just not worry about it? Is it just something in my head that's thinking, you got your play with your toy car? Don't do that. You look like an idiot. No, go and play with it. You'll be fine. No, no, no. People think you're stupid. Look at they're all looking at you. Well, they're not. So, what do you reckon? That's what the video's about. It's about a brief historic timeline of what I'm doing, a few thoughts, and kind of why I do what I do. I suppose, in a nutshell, would I still rather race full-size cars than do RC? I think I'm at that point now, my age, where I'm thinking, I don't know. I'd like to maybe play around with full-size cars and play around with RC. I'm not really either way. I don't want to take things too, it's bad enough racing and the LMP12 on the competitiveness and how good you've got to be and how good I'm not, as opposed to thinking you can race a kart still and be as quick, or any race car, and realise you're not as quick because you're getting older. I don't know. So I'm kind of in that camp of dibble dabble with either. I like dabbing around with an RC car, building it, hopping it up, making it look good, and maybe having a quick go of it, to opposed to setting up a kart and going out on a practice and having a go of it. I think I still do a little bit of indoor karting because it keeps you fit, but I suppose the competitiveness is just starting to sort of level out where it doesn't really matter what happens. I think that's where I'm at the moment, which is why I probably haven't put myself out to go to the local RC club in Wickham to race the RC10. I have got one of them. The LMP12. The competitiveness, although I'm impressed by what the others are doing, and I wish I was that good, the urgency isn't quite there. Don't know. Is that an age thing, or is it just me? Let me know your thoughts. It goes on a bit. I hope this video won't be too long and my voice doesn't drone you out, but it'd be interesting to hear from anyone from all ages, from just starting the hobby, into the hobby, up to maybe you come out of the hobby, or maybe you've just come into the hobby but you're older and you used to remember it from a kid and you just got back into it now. I don't know. But let me know what you think. But thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed listening to me and have your views. But I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.